We have a 2003 Chevy Trailblazer here, and the rear wiper is no longer working. So we're going to try and figure out what the issue is today. So the first thing we're going to check is the fuse for the rear wiper motor, and that's located on the driver's side back seat under the seat. So we're just going to pull this tab here, pull the seat forward, and the fuse panel is right under the seat here. To get access to it, we're just going to lift this plastic portion up. Next, we can take this plastic cover off here, and that's done by clipping these two ends here. So according to the diagram, the rear wiper motor fuse is breaker number 9. It's a 15 amp fuse, so that's located right there. All right, so to test the fuse, I'm just going to find a ground screw here on the side, the fuse box. Then we're going to make sure that we're getting 12 volts to either side. So we've got 12 volts on one side and 12 volts on the other side. So the fuse looks good. Next, we're going to open up the rear hatch. And we're going to check the wires that are coming from the fuse box to the motor in the hatch door. To do that, we're just going to pry this gasket off here. You can use a screwdriver or just grab with your fingers. And we'll just do a visual inspection of the wires and make sure that none of them are broken. So the wires look pretty clean. In order to get this gasket back on, I'm just going to take the plastic piece off and get it inset into the gasket first before we clip it back on. So we're just going to slide this plastic piece back in underneath here and then pull it up and over all the way along the outside here. There we go. Now we can snap this piece back into place and repeat the same process for the bottom gasket here. The motor for the rear wiper is located just underneath this trim piece on the rear hatch door here. So we're going to take this trim piece off next and do some testing to make sure that we're getting power to the motor. In order to do that, there is a torque screw in this hatch handle here that we're going to remove first. Once the screw has been removed, this piece should just pop right out. Now we're going to close the hatch door and pop the window open, and we're going to remove this little rivet here. To do that, we're just going to pop the center piece in, and then we should be able to pry it out. And last but not least, we can pry the back trim off by it just clipped in here. So we're just going to go all the way around and pop it out. Once the trim piece has been removed, we have access to the rear wiper motor here, and we're just going to remove this connector piece here and do the testing to make sure that we're getting voltage on these wires here. So I found the wiring diagram for the 2003 Chevy Trailblazer online, and the rear wiper is actually breaker 9, which we were looking at, 15 amp fuse there, and the orange wire is going directly to power it. That's the orange wire, and the black wire is just connected to ground, and the dark green wire is the rear window motor speed signal, so that just adjusts the speed. Alright, so I'm just grounding my negative terminal to the frame, and I am testing the orange terminal in the middle, and I am reading 0 volts. So that is definitely a problem. We're not getting power to this motor back here. So we do have a break in the wire somewhere between the fuse box and the motor. So I'm going to remove this gasket again. And inside here, there is a clip that I can grab out, pull out. And so we'll pull that clip out and disconnect it, and we'll do some quick troubleshooting and connectivity tests. There's the clip that I was talking about that just pulls out, and I'm just going to push this tab in and pull this piece out here. So I'm just going to set my multimeter on continuity mode, and then I'm going to put my red terminal in the center pin here, and I'm going to check each one of these pins here. This is the section that's going back through the hatch here. I'm going to test each one of these power pins here, the orange wires, and see if we have continuity with any one of those pins. Alright, so it looks like we do have continuity with the center pin on the right side. So we do have continuity on that center pin right there, so that should be the one that's providing power to the rear motor. So since we know that the wiring is good from the hatch door to the motor, I'm just going to replace the connection to the motor itself, plug it back in there. Now I'm going to test the voltage on the center orange pin at the back here and make sure that we have 12 volts coming to it. Alright, so I'm going to ground my negative terminal to the frame, and on the top pin we have 12 volts, the middle pin we have nothing, and the bottom pin we have 12 volts again. So it looks like we do have a break in the line somewhere between this connection here and the fuse panel. Alright, so since I think we've found the issue, I'm going to go ahead and replace the trim cover again on the hatch panel, so that just should snap into place. Once the trim piece is back in place, just going to replace that rivet there. And now we can turn our attention to the wiring between the hatch door and the fuse panel. I just want to make sure that the motor is still working, so what I'm going to do is just jumper the wire that has 12 volts coming to it to the middle one that seems to be broken, and we'll put this back into place and start the card and see if we can get the wiper motor to turn on. Alright, so I'm just going to put the key in the ignition, turn to the on position, and start the rear wipers. And sure enough, they are back in business. Alright, so after thinking about it for a bit, we decided to keep the jumper solution in place as our final solution. There's just too much effort to basically fish the wire from underneath there, and we have to remove the ceiling trim panels and the side trim panels to get down to our fuse box over there. So there's no real harm in leaving this in place. Basically what we've done is we were just borrowing some power from the rear hatch, the latch for the rear hatch motor, and those aren't operated at the same time anyway, so I don't think there'll be any overload on that circuit. So this will be the solution that we keep in place. Alright, so hopefully this video helps anyone else that's having a problem with a rear wiper not functioning on a 2003 Chevy Trailblazer.